Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing
William, I just wanted to express my condolences on the loss of Rusty. That's got to be really tough and very raw for you. So,
well. I appreciate that. Person's never prepared for that, and
no, there'd be nothing worse than a parent losing a child for sure.
absolutely true.
Not the way it's meant to happen.
And I appreciate your kind words there.
If it's cool with you, I'd like to talk to you about your incredible musical life, leading right up to today, where at the tender age of more than 80, you've written your very first song. Can we back up and talk about how you got into all this music stuff in the first place?
Well, I started out singing and learning to play guitar and singing harmonies when I was 6 and 7 years old. My sister taught me how to play and sing. She needed a rhythm guitar player. She needed a harmony singer. She could play guitar and mandolin and piano, but she loved playing her mandolin. And she was 3.5 years older than me and just talented as she could be. But she taught me how to play guitar, the chords, and how to sing harmony, which are the chords also, the chords using vocal harmonies and to make the chords. So she taught me that, and then it was later on we sang as a duet, old country songs and country gospel songs. We'd get to sing on Granddaddy's radio show about once a week and get to sing a song and sing in little schoolhouses and churches around where I grew up in South Alabama and Northwest Florida. And anyhow, it was my granddaddy Golden was a fiddle player, so he encouraged the music, and my family did. They bought us great, nice instruments, nice Gibson guitars and mandolins. And anyhow, I've still got my guitars that my family, my mother and dad bought me. And then later in high school, I joined the FFA quartet, Future Farmers of America kids, and so that was where I learned to love four-part harmony singing.
Right.
Uh,
Can I just ask you, William, what's the banging going on behind you?
yeah, that was my beautiful wife Simone cutting up vegetables on a cutting board.
So
That's
you
okay.
at the time you were learning harmonies and singing harmonies with your sister, of course you didn't have that beautiful deep voice that you possess today, did you?
No, I didn't. In fact, I was a little kid and I could sing high. I sang the high parts. I would sing the tenor above her. And then later on, when I got in high school and was singing in the FFA quartet, I think I sang some tenor in that one too, but then it was I would sing tenor or baritone. And then after that, I tried singing whatever part needed to be sang, and the groups that I would sing in after
Wow.
high school, and then it was singing with a group that I had that I met the Oak Ridge Boys and performed on stage with them 3 or 4 times and got to know them, and then pursued being able to sing with them, and so I made a trip to Nashville to talk to them about that, and anyhow, they were one of my favorite groups, and it was not only working with them, I admired them and their talents and all, but they had cut 2 albums with Warner Brothers. It was my favorite albums back then of anybody in gospel music, four-part harmony singing. And but I also love four-part harmony stuff on like the Coasters, the rock and roll. Yakety Yak, Don't Talk Back, and those songs. I love that in rock and roll, but
Yeah.
they had groups in rock and roll back then. When I was growing up, and right after rock and roll hit, then it was the Platters and then the Coasters and all these great doo-wop groups and singing groups that had four-part harmonies on,
Right.
and some of them would have great bass singers. But getting with the Oak Ridge Boys, that I joined them in 1965 in January, so I'm approaching that being 60 years ago. And
That's amazing. So how did you get to join them? What's the story behind that?
well, like I said, I'd met them being on big shows, these all-night singers with them at different outdoor shows in gospel music where there'd be several groups on, and they have them down south, or they used to, I know. But I had met them and knew them, and I knew they had made a change in the group at one time. And I didn't think that guy quite fit them. So about 6 months later, I drove to Nashville and talked to him about that. And I said, that because I had been a huge fan of the other guy that had been there with Gary McSpadden. But anyhow, it was a situation that uh, I talked to him and told him what I thought. And I asked him if he'd ever make another change, I'd like an opportunity to try out for the gig. And so about 2 months later, they called me and invited me to come to Nashville. They said they needed a new baritone singer. So I came up and tried out, and they said, well, man, we'd love to have you. And I said, really? Well, when would we start? They said, this weekend. So I said, oh, wow. So I said, okay, I'll be back. I had to go back down home to Alabama, and I turned my notice in at a gig, at a job that I was doing there, and packed my clothes and come back to Nashville. And anyhow, that's how I got the gig with the Oak Ridge Boys. And so
Amazing.
I've dedicated my life to learning. Every day is a learning experience, and you give it all you've got throughout your life and take every opportunity to be able to sing that you get the opportunity to.
Yeah. So the moral of that story is that if you hadn't have had the guts to approach them in the first place, it would have never happened.
That's true. So no one was knocking on my door trying to give me a full-time job singing. I had to go after it, and just like when you get there, it's like life is. If you don't get out and go sing, that's also, you don't have an opportunity to sing at home very often, unless we're around the piano in there, and which I enjoy that too. But far as to go out and professionally sing, you've got to prepare for it, and you've also got to go out there and do it. Yeah. To if you're going to survive doing it, you got to hone your craft, and every day is a new day to get better.
Yeah. So sorry.
You never get too old to learn something new. So that's kind of how I feel, and I still learn things new.
Amazing. So how did your life change once you joined the group?
Well, I had 3 young boys, 2, 4, and 6 years old. And so I was with them and would go home and visit for about 6 months on my times off, and back and forth. But then I moved my family up to Hendersonville here in Tennessee in the summer after school was out. I joined in January, and then the summer moved them up here, and but it changed from singing part-time to dedicating all my days to be prepared and to focus on what it takes to survive singing. And but music and singing is a multifaceted business. It takes a lot of different people in a lot of different areas of music to make it work. You've got from the old days of when we did it all ourselves. You know, sometimes you had to book the dates yourself. Then you had to be your own roadies and carry your own equipment and set it all up, and then go change clothes and put on a suit and go sing. And then after that's over, you go back and put on your clothes to tear down all the equipment and load it back up.
Right.
So that's kind of what we did at that point. But then as you become a little more successful, you're able to hire great, talented people that know more about technology than we do, and for sound and lights and things that you really need to showcase what it is you are doing as far as your music and performance.
Yeah. When you started with them, they were already a very successful gospel quartet, weren't they? And once you joined them, their direction changed a whole lot.
Well, it was kind of a thing where sometimes being in groups can be challenging. You know, it's you're dealing with different personalities, different people, and but you have to be able to be sharing and giving in a group. You know, and it's you can't allow your egos to get out of hand, or everybody is it affects everybody. So that's the thing that we tried to do, was to try to keep our egos in check, and especially, you know, when we really started having big hit records and crossover records and things. It was we tried to make our concerts and our shows much better, investing in our quality of technology that we were presenting. You know, we took big production on the show. We were some of the very first people to take big production out on the road in concerts in country music. Rock and roll was doing it, but there was no one in country music back then when we first got into country. So that was the thing that we enjoyed, having all the production at these shows and the great lights and, you know, fog machines and
Right.
Bobit lake lights and that type stuff. So,
But
and
why?
so
But sorry, but why had you made the transition from gospel to country? Did you see a bigger potential in going country, or what was the rationale behind that?
what it was we had in 1969. I'd been with the group about 5 years, I guess. We had a band together by then. We didn't have a full band when I joined. We had a four-piece band, a drummer, a bass player, a piano player, and a guy that played steel guitar and electric guitar. And we went to California to Whitney Studios outside of LA there, and we took our band and we went in and recorded a full album together with the Oak Ridge Boys and our band. That year, that light album was released. That album won all the awards in gospel music that year. And you win all the awards, and you feel like, you know, if this is the top of the heap, it's not a large heap. So you realize that you're singing songs that most people only want to hear one day a week, if they want to hear it then. So it's gospel music. There's 6 more days a week that people want to live and not be reminded about Sunday and sin and those things. And
Right.
so I realized we needed to make a change, that we needed to expand our music. And at that point, and because we'd worked with some of these country groups, and they were some of the nicest people we ever met, and it was none of the backbiting and jealousies and all that in country music. So we worked with Roy Clark, we worked with Johnny Cash and those people. Well, then we got with Jim Halsey to manage the Oak Ridge Boys, and he took us from being a gospel group, small gospel group, because gospel music is not as big and broad and don't draw the people that normally country music, and rock and roll was growing back then. So it took Jim Halsey, who was one of the biggest managers in country music agencies in country music, and he had TV division in LA that was part of his company. He had a great TV agent there, Dick Howard and Judy Popsky, that ran the LA office that concentrated on getting their acts on the Tonight Show and anything that had network television tied to it, and getting on shows that normally you didn't see country music on. So that's what they focused on. And they were able to take the Oak Ridge Boys when we started, when we released our first country album that Jim Halsey arranged with ABC Records. Ron Chancey produced us. Jim Vogelsong was the president at that time. And so that was 1977. We had the Y'all Come Back Saloon. It went to #2, stayed there for 3-4 weeks. One song stayed up there 5 or 6 weeks, was at #1 was Heaven's Just a Sin Away by the Kendalls. And the Y'all Come Back Saloon was #2 there for about a month or so. Anyhow, it was back to that started, it opened the door, and our third single went to #1. It was a song called I'll Be True to You. Beautiful ballad. And then every album we had, we pulled 3 singles off of it and have another album out, and had a new album every year, and we would release 3 singles off of it. So we did that and had a great run. 1981, we released Elvira after recording it. And Elvira flew up the charts on country music. It spilled over into pop and rock and roll, and every radio station that was playing music was playing Elvira. And it went on to the top of the pop charts and rock and roll charts. So
yeah,
the Hot 100 charts on Billboard. So anyhow, that was a real interesting time. And the Oak Ridge Boys have been able to be a household name and to be able to work most all the dates that we can physically work every year.
William, what was that time like for you? You'd come from Southern Alabama singing gospel, you'd transitioned into country. All of a sudden, you're the top of the pop and the rock charts, the Hot 100 charts. What did that feel like for you?
Well, it was gratifying to realize that after about, I joined in 65, and by the time we hit 75, we were on the verge of having our first country album. And so it was 12 years after I had joined it, we finally got our first country album, first top country song. And then it was like 4 years later after that, releasing an album a year, that we had Elvira in 1981. And again, it was a song that everybody in America was singing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not only in America, I got to tell you.
Families would bring their little kids 2 or 3 years old and hold them up to the stage and tell us that they knew all the words to the song, and it's the first song they ever knew all the words to. And it had a multi-generation appeal as far as people from 1 to 101, basically.
Had you ever felt like giving up in that first 10 years?
I never have. I made a decision to follow as far as it could take me, and I'm still following that. And I still enjoy singing and singing harmonies and whatever opportunity I get to sing.
Right. So by the time you had Elvira, you must have been pinching yourself. And I'd imagine that egos might have started to get a little out of control at that point.
Well, It was after Elvira, then it's become, we had Bobbie Sue, which is another song that went to the top of the country charts, has spilled over into the pop 100. And so it went up close to the top of the charts too. It was in the top 10. And so that opened up country music at that time it was like 3 times as big as gospel music. But then when you crossed over into pop stream music and played on all those pop records and stations and rock and roll stations, that it tripled again as far as the crowd sizes it was appealing to and the people that was coming out to see it.
Yeah.
So it went from when Elvira came along, we had in the late 70s, 79, 80, we did the Full House tour with Kenny Rogers and Dottie West. And we would go out and sing. And anyhow, it was a Full House tour. We did 2 years of that with Kenny Rogers. We did like 200 big arenas, 200 of the largest arenas in the country. We did with a package of Kenny Rogers, the Oak Ridge Boys, and Dottie West. So then we had Elvira right after 2 years of that. And that propelled us into headlining the big arenas. And then we had opening acts for the Oak Ridge Boys, the Bellamy Brothers, and different people, you know, that we would have open our shows. So it was a lot of fun times.
Did you all manage to keep your feet on the ground?
Well, most of the time. Sometimes we'd get a little louder. Get way out on the edge out there occasionally.
I mean, I'd imagine that with all that success, it'd be pretty hard to keep yourself grounded and not kind of spin out a little bit.
Well, it's sometimes it can be rough on relationships.
Yeah.
I know. I sang a song with the Oaks called "Trying to Love Two Women." It's like a ball and chain. Well, that was at the time I recorded it. Ron Chancey, the record producer, he knew my story. That was kind of my life story at that point. You know, I was in love with 2 women, my wife and my girlfriend. So I recorded that song, and that's what was going on. It's not that it worked out, because you wind up sometimes, like I did, I lost both of them as far as when they approach you to, they want to know who you love. I mean, you're telling this when you love them, and then they get together and talk. Then they come to you together and want to know who do you love. And yeah, I've been down that road, and in fact, I wound up without either one of them. So that's kind of what that can lead to.
Yeah, I get that. I guess music was your first love always, wasn't it? That would have had to come in pride of place before your family and girlfriends or anything else. You had to devote yourself entirely to the music, and it was a hard taskmaster.
Well, probably so. It's you know, and I take full responsibility for for being an absentee husband and creating situations that it was not my wife's fault. So
yeah, I get that. I spoke to the late Gordon Lightfoot some time ago before he passed away, and he also was quite remorseful about the time that he had lapsed and let relationships and children and stuff go. And he said he'd been trying to do his absolute best to make up to everybody around him that he'd wronged. But I would imagine that, I mean, you wouldn't have had a choice. You swept away with the current, and the world, your audiences, the record companies, everyone is demanding something from you. So it'd be really hard to pay full attention to what matters most too.
It is, and again, you get caught up into the everyday thing.
Yeah.
It's every day is a new day in a new town, and headed that way. So, but it is, and you can't. That's one thing about this business is you got to keep your focus, and you can't allow people to distract you and pull you off over to this side or this side, and you got to keep your focus on where it is you're at and where it is you're wanting to go in life, and you pursue that. And every day is a new day to get closer to that.
I guess that explains why you've had 4 wives.
It probably is.
Yeah. William, what happened in 1987 with the band? Because you left the band at that stage, didn't you? For a short time only.
Yeah, I was, and I was probably a little controversial, and certainly with my look and all, it was not what they would have wanted. And anyhow, it's one thing led to another. But again, those situations, when people are young, they can make foolish decisions, and they can allow egos and greed and selfishness to mess up a good deal. And again, I've made my share of mistakes and kind of pushed the limit in life and enjoyed life. And I'm open about what I do normally, and I don't try to pretend to be somebody that I'm not. And sometimes that gets you in trouble.
So you say it was actually 1987. I think I said 1985. It was 87 when you stepped away from them. You say that you were controversial and because of your image. You've always maintained the same image, haven't you?
Well, early in my career, I was a clean cut guy with a clean shaven and coiffed hair and the whole bit. And somewhere along the way, I went camping with a bunch of primitive camping mountain man guys, went off to a weekend on a primitive camping deal. I enjoyed that. I like getting back away from electricity and starting a fire with a flint and steel and
Right.
camping out and living primitive and cooking over a fire and things like that and surviving in the wild. And but it's exhilarating to go and to get away from stuff like the fast life and in hotels and out of hotels and that whole.
Yeah.
Today it's a hotel, checking in, checking out, and all of that.
Yeah.
But it was a good diversion from that when things really got going successful with the Oak Ridge Boys, where we could pay our bills and things. But it was good to escape into that primitive atmosphere.
And that's when the beard emerged?
It was then I had a stubble beard, like a 5-day growth look or a 1-week growth look. And I had that for about 2 or 3 years. And then I'd go on these camping trips. These guys, these woolly looking mountain men would say, "Man, want that beard to ever grow?" And I said, I got to thinking, well, I better see if it will. And so I decided to let it grow natural and just not trim it or anything.
Right.
It took about 3 years to get out to its full length. And I still haven't trimmed it. So that's from 1940 was the last, 1980 was the last time that I trimmed my beard.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, you're certainly saving on
And
razors.
it's been, it took about 3 years to get to full length. And it was dark back when I grew it, but it don't get any longer. It just gets whiter.
I like it. And when did you write your autobiography, Behind the Beard?
During the pandemic, I I turned off all the negative hate on television news. Everybody hating everybody, and when the pandemic hit, they sent us all home. Entertainers and singers and musicians told us we were part of the ones that they didn't need. You know, we're not. Anyhow, they had a word for it: the essential and the unessential.
That's right.
We were part of unessential.
Of course, yeah.
So what I did is I was watching people on TV that you could tell that they sure thought they were essential, but I didn't think they were. Spewing hate, everybody hating everybody, and division, and I felt like I was being lied to and deceived, and I felt an evilness coming out about 3 weeks into the pandemic. And so we're going to put the dip 2 weeks, got to wear a mask, then it will. But that was all set up. And anyhow, I had to get away from it. Got out on the back patio here under the trees, and I'd had a vision to do this thing with my family prior to the pandemic, about a couple of years earlier, and I couldn't get them all together. They had careers going, and me doing 150 days a year with the Oak Ridge Boys, I couldn't get it going. So at that time, I realized now's the time to do what I've been wanting to do for 2 years. I've had this vision. I want to put it together. Got the family over here. We started singing. Then we went in the studio and started recording what we were doing. And we wound up recording 34 old songs that had inspired us during life to be in the music business, and songs that we had always loved, that the writers were essential and the people that performed them were essential in our lives. And we wanted to document that and do it in harmony with the family. And so my kids all sing harmonies, and we got a young bass singer, a friend of ours, that's one of the best you'll ever hear. And anyhow, he joined us. We did a lot of 4-part harmony singing on all these old classic songs and country music and gospel music and some old time rock and roll songs we were harmonizing in. We did things like we did 2 Eagles songs. We did Chris, my son, did Southern Accent by Tom Petty, and Rusty did Hollywood Nights. My son Craig did one of Greg Allman's song called Multicolored Lady. And we had one that some of the top musicians in Nashville played on our records with us. And so we got in the studio here and there, and we couldn't, had problems stopping singing. It was so exhilarating and healing going through such a time, you know. I mean, we found, they told us we couldn't get together in the crowd. We can't go to church and all these things you can't do. And but we got together as a family and our friends and musicians. And we made music through that. We found healing, mentally, emotionally, physical, and spiritual healing. And singing these songs and harmonize on these courses, a lot of classic songs that never had harmony in the beginning on those songs. And so it was there that I also did an album with the Oak Ridge Boys in the pandemic. Front Porch Singing was the last one that Joe sang with us. And then I did the autobiography with Scott England. He'd come over and sit on the front porch and with a notepad, and he would ask questions for a couple of hours, and we'd talk. Had a little recorder. He'd set it down on the table between us, and we'd sit there and talk for 2 hours, and then he'd pick his recorder up, his tablet. He'd say, well, I'll see you in a couple of days. And he'd be back a couple of days. And I guess we probably had 50 or 60 sit downs of him asking questions. And I told him, I said, you know, I'm not really a writer. You're welcome to talk to anybody that we talk about and get their side of the story about who I am. So he did. He talked to my first wife. talked to my fourth wife. And anyhow, he was talk to different people to get their side of the story. My first wife talked about my unfaithfulness and about the story with her and my girlfriend getting together and hitting me up about who do you love. You're telling her you love her, and you're also telling me you love me. What it was. So I really did. I love both of them, and so that's the reason I could sing that song. Trying to love two women, it's like a ball and chain.
I get it. I absolutely get it. I think there are a lot of people listening to this that understand that too. And, you know, as they say, shit happens. You got a big heart. What can you do? It's so, having done all of those interviews for the book, what would you say in essence? And I mean, I know it's a big book and it's a great read and there's lots of parts to William Lee Golden, but what in essence is behind the beard? Who is William Lee Golden?
Well, I'm nobody special. I grew up on a farm in South Alabama, Northwest Florida, and my dad was a big farmer. My granddaddy was a fiddle player, and he was also a farmer. And it was, but yeah, I was impacted by music when I was real young, and it inspired me. It stimulated my excitement, and I loved playing and singing. It was something that my sister taught me when I was 6 and 7 years old, and I kept learning every time I would sing and learn new songs. You know, you'd learn the harmony parts to those songs.
Yeah.
And it's been a valuable asset to me throughout all of my singing career is the fundamental basic things that my sister and my mother taught me when I was 6 and 7, making chords, singing, and harmonizing, and all of that, and the joy that music can bring us, and when we do that. Yeah. So that's what I've followed all my life is where the music takes.
Yeah, music's been your religion, huh? And still is.
Yes.
Which brings us up to today. And there are two things more that I want to talk to you about, William. Firstly, that the Oak Ridge Boys have a new single coming out. It's called I Thought About You, Lord, and it features Willie Nelson. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We, the Oak Ridge Boys, cut a brand new album in January. And this was the month after Joe Bonzo left our group. Joe was struggling with ALS, the Lou Gehrig disease, for 3 years on the road. And it got to the point that he was having to be helped on stage, balanced on a stool by 2 people. And but he was a trooper. He kept going because he was singing good, but he lost his abilities in his legs. And at the end, it was the last 2 or 3 days in December that our Christmas show was going. He wanted to make it to the end, and he did make it to the end, but it was the last 3 days that he struggled the most. And at the end of the last Christmas date, he said, guys, that's it. I can't go any further. And so the next day, Joe called this young Ben James. He said, get your singing britches on. The Oaks need you to sing with them and fill in here for me. So Ben came. We never had a rehearsal with him. He still hasn't missed a word or a pitch. And it's amazing. He was a godsend to the Oak Ridge Boys. And it's a new generation. He has Tony Brown that produced all the last 20 albums of George Strait, and Reba McEntire's albums. He's also worked with Vince Gill a lot in the studio. When he heard Ben James sing here at my house last year about this time, he told Ben, he said, has anybody ever told you you got a voice like Vince Gill? He said, I've not heard a voice like that in a whole generation, but you're a brand new generation with a Vince Gill voice. And Ben said, well, Vince has always been one of my favorite singers. So he comes out of bluegrass singing too, but he was raised with Oak Ridge Boys music and bluegrass music. Mm-hmm. So he was singing with a couple of other top bluegrass groups when we met him, and he told us how much that he loved the Oaks and had grown up loving us, and he saw that Joe was struggling, and he offered his service. He'd love to come and help him and stand by him and sing, or behind him and sing, help him if he got to struggling. And so he's really a godsend to the Oak Ridge Boys.
And how did this new single come about with Willie Nelson?
It came by that Dave Cobb is our producer. We've done 5 albums now with Dave Cobb. He produces Chris Stapleton and the people that are winning all the awards every year. He did the Elvis movie soundtrack that was out a couple of years ago. Uh-huh. He's been one of the most unique people to work with for his approach to producing and making music. But he brought, I don't know who brought the song in, but I know that they cut the track on it. And when we cut it, he wanted to get Willie to be involved with us on it and to pair us together on a song. Since we had never worked and never sang a song with Willie, everybody else in the business has sang a song with Willie except the Oak Ridge Boys. So it was something that we would love to do. And Dwayne Allen is from Texas and Willie's from Texas. Yeah. So Dwayne sang the first verse, I think, then Willie took the second verse. Right. And,
seems like a natural fit.
Yeah. And Dave Cobb sent the tracks to Texas for Willie to put his part on there at his studio.
Right. William, I'm just running short of time, and I want you to tell me about this very first song that you've ever written. At the tender age of 85, you've written your first song called I Got My Heart on You, and you've joined forces with a young Australian girl, well, you tell me the story behind I've Got My Heart on You, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, it was a situation where my youngest son, Solomon, he and his mother divorced about 10 or 11 years ago now. And at that time, Solomon was about 12 years old. And after the divorce, she picked up and moved Solomon to Austin. And it was out of reach. I would try to call him and talk to him, and it became a thing that, so that's how it all started. Was I'd call, leave messages, and I wouldn't get return calls. And it was, I was just missing the communication with my son that I'd been with. And every day I was home since he was born for the first 12 years. And anyhow, I was here at home that weekend and out in the backyard under the trees and on the patio. And I just wanted to have a way to express my feelings. I was feeling frustrated that he was a teenager then and had been pulled away and we was drifting further apart. Mm. As a father, I was missing out on his adolescence and his teenage years, and that was heart-wrenching for me to deal with, the anguish that I was feeling at that time. So I knew if I wrote him a letter trying to say that, it could be discarded and thrown in the trash or whatever. It wouldn't be something he might keep, but then I got to putting words together in my mind and my thoughts, and I started putting melodies with my feelings. And then I was spent all day deep into this, remembering back and reflecting back from this day he was born to places we did together and traveling to expose him to different cultures and things. Anyhow, that was how it started and how behind it. But after I got to writing it, the second, third day there, and I couldn't get away from it. It was going in my mind when I'd wake up and I'd all day working and focusing on that and slowly putting the song together with the verse, the chorus, another verse, and another chorus, and a bridge, and maybe another chorus. But and I'd written it, and I shared with Jeff Panzer that I had written it. He's a longtime best friend in LA. He's a TV producer. He kept wanting to hear it, and I didn't have a tape of it. And it was 6 or 8 months later that he kept, ever so often, would ask me, "What about that song? I've been waiting to hear it." So anyhow, he finally talked me into taking my phone, singing it a cappella to the phone. He said, "I've got someone to help you put the music to it." He said, because he was managing Danny Stefanetti's girl that he had discovered, extremely talented. And, anyhow, he said, "I'll get her to help you put this all together and get music to your song, so you'll have something. She can tape it." I sang it into my phone and sent it to her. She put music to my melody and my words. And she's written over 300 songs. And she's an incredible guitarist, incredible singer. And she helped me put it together and sent me the thing back with all the sort of music put together on it. And found out she had done all of that herself on like a music box thing that she can, an app that she could, got all this music that she can create one note at a time. And anyhow, she brought that here with me. She had sang the song, and I liked the way she sang it. So she brought the computer here and a nice microphone, set it up in here in our piano room, and
you did it together.
we recorded my version of it here with her track and her playing guitar again. She had layers of guitar that she put on there, and so anyhow, she did such a good job. I wanted her. It's a song that lent itself to someone else singing a verse, and I wanted her to take the second verse, and it's a love song is what it is. It happened to be inspired by my son, Solomon, that when he was 5 and 6 years old, he would call me on the phone and leave a message on my phone when I'd be on the road 150 days a year. Sometimes he'd leave a message. I'd come back and check my phone, and he'd say, "Hey, Dad, this is Solomon. I got my heart on you." Keep those messages.
Gorgeous.
When I did it, putting it back together,
Did it, William? How has that song resonated with Solomon now? How does he feel about it?
Well, Solomon's 23 now. He's in medical school in college in Austin, and I talk to him occasionally. He called me here this past week, and we talked. So I think he's understanding more of, as he's becoming a young man, of my love for him. I wanted him to know that I loved him as much as he shared as a young child, that he loved me, and when he would leave me those messages. So that's how it is.
Makes the hair stand up on my arms. Lovely. So nice. And I mean, there are many parents, I'm sure, listening to this who are separated from their kids for one reason or another, who will take great heed from what you've done and reaching out to your son in this way. in the way that you knew best to do that through your music. William Lee Golden, I'll let you go now. You've been extraordinarily generous with your time with me. We thank you so much, and congratulations on an amazing career and an incredible dedication to music from all the Oak Ridge Boys fans and the William Lee Golden fans right around the world. From our heart to yours, we thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
I
Hope we
couldn't
get
agree
to do
more.
it again.
Yeah, me too. All the very, very best to you, William. Thank
All right.
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.